Welcome everyone. I call this regular meeting of the Implementation Board to order. We will conduct this meeting via Zoom. All attendees will be muted until public comment period. Please note that this meeting is being recorded. All visual, verbal, and written comments are public record. Board members, at various points in this meeting, we will engage in group discussion. To ask questions or share a comment, please raise your hand by clicking the button on the right side of your screen, or raise your hand visually for us to see as well. Then you will be entered into a queue. When the discussions formally begin, I will call on you in the order, or Harold will call on you in the order in which your hand was raised. After your turn, you can raise your hand again to be entered back in the queue. Sola, we'll go on to roll call.
Thank you. Carrie Anderson. Nate Caminos.
Here.
Paula Caballo.
Here.
John Chelmanak.
Here.
Gordon McHenry Jr. Harold Odom.
Here.
Damian Patanud.
Here.
Adrian Quinn.
Here.
Michael Ramos.
Here.
Sarah Rankin.
Here.
Simha Reddy.
Present.
And Lamont Green.
Here, filling in for Juanita Spotted Out.
Thank you. I believe we have a quorum, 2 missing.
Thank you, Sola. We acknowledge, let's do on to land acknowledgement for today's meeting. We acknowledge that all U.S. land is originally Native American land. Here in the Pacific Northwest, the Coastal Salish are the original residents, protectors of this land. Some of the Coastal Salish tribes are not currently recognized by the federal government, such as the Duwamish tribe, thus limiting their access to key privileges granted by federally recognized tribes. Native Americans have been present in our region for thousands of years and remain present to this day. We have 10 minutes on today's agenda for public comment. If you would like to provide a verbal comment, please type your name and the city from which you're calling into the chat function. Carrie will use this to build a queue for the public comment period of the agenda. In addition, you may use the chat function to provide written comments starting now until the public comment section of the agenda begins. With that, I'll hand it over to Harold for the approval of minutes. I also want to note Gordon McHenry Jr. has joined us for purposes of roll. Thank you, Gordon. And go ahead, Harold.
Welcome, everyone. So today we're going to be asked for approval of minutes, but we're going to go through 5 minutes. 5 minutes that we have not approved. And they are January 15th, February 3rd, February 4th, February 10th, and March 1st. We have the special meetings, and we've been doing a lot of paperwork. So at this time, I call for motion to approve the agenda. So, the chairs will entertain a motion to approve minutes. Adrian Quinn, I see has made a motion. Do we hear a second?
Second. From Sarah Rankin.
Sarah Rankin, thank you. No need for discussion. Minutes have been approved.
So I have to take a vote, Harold. Can you just do all in favor? Please vote by
All in
saying.
favor, I'm sorry. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
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 Nay, all those opposed, nay.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Thank you, Lamont. Lamont is filling in for Juanita Spotted Out. So we'll now move into public comment. As Nate mentioned before, we've set 10 minutes aside for public comment. For members of the public, if you wish to comment and have not yet typed your name into the chat window to be called upon, please do so now. I'm not going to stop. I might pause for a minute. My eyes focus in and out, but please bear with me. I'm not going to stop or give it over to anyone. So each individual will be given 2 minutes to comment. Carrie will call upon individuals in the order they have been provided in the chat window and unmute them. Carrie will announce when they've reached their 2 minutes and ask you to finish your comment, and then call on the next speaker. I'll open the public comment section now and close in 10 minutes. Let's say it's 10 or 2:10. So at 2:20, we'll close public comment. Public comment is now open.
I was a little bit late on opening the chat for that public comment, so we might want to wait a minute.
Okay.
Again, to be signed up for verbal public comment, go ahead and put your name and the city from which you're calling in the chat. If you're on the phone and you would like to make public comment, you may go ahead and hit *9 to raise your hand, and I can go ahead and call on you to unmute you. But as of right now, we have no one signing up for public comment.
I know last week we had a little, or last meeting we had on the first, we had a little faux pas. Has that been corrected?
Yes.
Well, let's give it a minute or so more, have that uncomfortable silence for a moment.
Take a step back and actually think about it. It gets overwhelming. It's just like, wow, look at how far we've come. Taking that makes like sense. You say, wow, we haven't come that far enough.
Still no one, Carrie?
Yep, still no one. We can also leave the public comment open, the chat function open for written public comment for a little bit if folks like.
And we'll do that for 10 minutes. And if anybody would wish to provide public comment, they can do so in the chat window. But at this time, we'll close verbal public comment. And I'll turn it over to Nate.
Thank you, Damien. Thank you, Harold. My apologies. Just looking at Damien on the screen. Let's go over to the feedback from CEO Search Committee portion of today's agenda. As you recall, last Monday's special meeting, one of the takeaways from our special meeting was an interest from several members of this board to see the list of 17 total candidates that the CEO Search Committee reviewed in December of last year. Board members, you all received the packet of information that includes those applications from me last week. Staff, if we could pull up the CEO search process timeline on the screen too for the board and the audience, that'd be great for them to see when you have a moment. Today we have a few members of the CEO Search Committee, Search Subcommittee here in public session to share information with us regarding the search process. Alex Ebrahimi from King County and Lisa Gustafson from the city of Seattle. And my fellow co-chair, Harold Oldham, will be available on behalf of the Lit Experience Coalition with the other two members of the LEC and the search committee who are unfortunately unable to join us this afternoon. So Lisa, Alex, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to be here today. I understand Joyce Nichols on behalf of the Sound Cities Association wasn't able to join us today, but Alex, I believe you have her feedback to share to the board as well when we get to you. Board members, for this portion of our agenda today, the committee members are here to speak to and take questions regarding the process that led up to the search committee selecting what they identified as the top 4 candidates for a board to interview. If you have specific questions regarding the qualifications of specific candidates, I'd welcome a motion to go into executive session thereafter to review and discuss the qualifications on any of those candidates that the search committee reviewed. Lisa, Alex, would one of you like to start?
Thanks, Nate. Thanks for having me here as well. Confirming that I did speak briefly this morning with Joyce, and the conversation was short, but I believe I got the gist of her feedback on the process. I think coming into this space, I'm receptive to responding to questions as best as possible. I don't know if there's something specific you're looking for me as an opener, and Lisa, if you have something that you want to bring to the conversation, please go.
Thanks, Alex. I think, no, completely, willing to answer questions. I think that the most important message I'd want to share with the committee is that our group spent a considerable amount of time reviewing resumes. We used, which I believe you've all had, the criteria for reviewing for the resume review. So I just wanted to assure the committee that the process was extensive. I'll also note that there were several occasions where we took a pause to make sure that we were getting it right, frankly. So that would be just my initial comments that I'd like to share.
Thank you, Alex and Lisa. Board members, any questions on the process?
Just to confirm what we're looking at now on the screen, can somebody sort of explain what this is? I'm presuming from the title what it is. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Sola, did you want to talk about this?
Yep, sure. I can give a quick synopsis. So this is just a visual depiction of the overall CEO recruitment process that took place beginning in May of 2020 and ending hopefully soon. Yet not determined. So it just talks through each of the steps of the process, selecting the recruitment firm, establishing the search committee, beginning the work of the committee, external stakeholder process, reviewing kind of initial process documents, developing a screening tool, working through recruitment, finalizing recruitment materials, a stakeholder engagement report provided by Hawkins, the process for interviews, meet and greets, initial interviews, candidate meet and greets, a final recommendation, etc. Just as an opportunity to kind of provide like the breadth of time that it has taken to go through this process. And I think it's important to note just how many stakeholders were engaged in this process. So these were specific meetings engaging a broad group of folks from the Lived Experience Coalition, a broad group of folks representing Sound Cities, jurisdictions, staff, work groups. I think some provider feedback was also solicited and incorporated into the recruitment materials that went out in order for us to select the best candidate possible.
Thanks, Sol. I believe this document has been something that we've used in recent meetings, if not at the governing committee meeting level as well. And Carrie, I know we're sharing your screen there, and if you could scroll down a bit to more comprehensively answer Sarah's question, you'll see the CEO search committee members. It was something that we had discussed back in December and January as well. Again, it includes Alex, Lisa, and Harold in there as well. Any other questions?
So I have my hand up.
Okay, we'll go ahead, John, and then Michael. Sorry, it's hard for me to see given the shared screen, but please bear with me.
Oh, yeah, no problem at all. I am kind of curious. Of the 4 people who were sent forward for interviewing, one I felt had very little policy experience. 2 were highly steeped in policy, federal, local. A third had done a lot of work in the area and had some policy background. There was a wide range of things that the search committee should be looking at in terms of the qualifications, but it really did surprise me. I guess I'm asking, what when you boil it down, what were you looking for? And as I say, one of the concerns was one person who came forward really didn't seem to have a lot of government policy experience. And when I look at some of the other candidates who didn't come forward, they seem to have a lot of that. So I'm curious for any on the search committee, what really sort of stood out as what you were looking for.
Thanks for that question, John. Knowing the constraint of the public meeting, I'm going to try and speak in a general term. I just want to verify that the members of this group received the screening criteria that was used in the search committee, right? So I would point to not being able to articulate all of those criteria off the top of my head. I would point to that document as what we were looking for. And that may not be a satisfactory answer for you, John. So I guess if you have a specific question that would warrant an executive session, as mentioned, that's an option. But I think that, simply put, those were the criteria we were using against the candidates that we were provided after Hawkins did their good labor to narrow down the list of applicants.
Yeah, that really doesn't help. So that may be where we end up going, but I accept your answer, your public answer.
Thank you, John. And before we go to Michael, I just want to recognize Pastor Anderson has been able to join us for today's meeting for the record and for roll. Thank you, Pastor Anderson, for being here. Michael?
Yes, I have no doubt about the integrity of the people on the search committee, nor the process that was engaged in. I do have a question about whether there were other qualified candidates among the pool of applicants qualified to serve in the position of CEO. Another way of saying this is, how did you land on the number 4? Was it determined that 4 would be the number of candidates that you would land upon, or was it 4 who were qualified to possibly do the job? As someone who was not privy to the other applications, I would want to know that other qualified applicants were not left out of the process or open to further review by this committee, given that the vacancy still exists.
This is Harold, if I may chime in. So exactly, we had a good number of people on the screening committee that was selected and approved. And just for being on that committee, we worked hard and diligently. We went through several parts of the screening committee to make sure people had bodies of work. And it has to be said that the original screening criteria we went back on, and so if we use that screening material, that screening guideline, what applicants would be acceptable to this committee? We have to look at the theory of change, equity, racial aspects of what to bring into the Regional Homeless Authority, and someone who was steeped in those areas as well as managing a body of work or had good recognition of what's going on throughout the nation in certain areas. CEA, rapid rehousing, different items that were just not being touched on if you just went with the original screening criteria. It would eliminate a lot of people. So that being said, the screening committee, and we have to honor our work. As I tell people, we have to honor the implementation board. We have to honor the screening committee's work, because we did work hard. We went through a screening criteria, and we came up with 4 good candidates, and candidates that, in our mind, shine head and tails above the rest of the 17, or out of the 17, shine high. And so that's my perspective on it. And if you say those 17, well, why should we not go back to the 44? You have to say you respect and honor the work of certain groups that bring it to this implementation board, and honor their work and respect their work.
I would add, thank you, Harold and Alex. I would add also that the Hawkins Group, we as a community engaged the Hawkins Group for their expertise in being able to conduct these types of searches. And they guided us throughout the process and really facilitated the discussion that helped us get to the recommendation of 4 candidates. And if I remember correctly, you know, we went back and forth on 4 or 5. Do we, you know, where do we land? How many do we want to put forward? And the final package was what the group collaboratively agreed upon that we would put forward. But I don't want to forget about the fact that we had a professional firm that guided us through the process and helped us to narrow our search. They also interviewed the candidates and shared with us their impressions and what they learned. And that also came into, was a factor as we were making our decision around what types of public policy experience we would take into consideration as we were moving folks forward, as well as some of the different skill sets that, you know, we felt that were needed that are represented in this, in the criteria that you have on the screen.
Thank you, Harold and Lisa. We'll go to Adrian and then Simha.
Thanks, and I did want to thank the initial review committee for bringing candidates, and wanted to reflect back that when we all received the resumes and had our initial discussion, we talked about there being a pool, at least in the ones that we had seen, of highly qualified candidates, and I don't think that I don't know why our opinion would change right now, and so we were brought 4 qualified candidates, each bringing different strengths. There's never any one candidate that for whom you can check every box. And so there was some diversity in skills and backgrounds on those candidates. I want to encourage all of us to move forward. We can talk about what happened for quite some time, and I think it's important for us to understand if there were fatal flaws in the process or if there are other candidates to whom we should be going back to. But I think it's important for us to be thinking about how we move forward, whether it is with going back to the initial pool, opening up the pool again, hiring an interim. But I would really encourage us to think about moving forward and not revisiting the past and what happened with the past. I think we all have a sense of urgency for making change in this community, and the sooner we can move to that, I think the better off the people who are currently living on the streets and highly vulnerable will be better off.
Thank you, Adrian. Simha, and then Pastor Anderson.
Hi there, can you hear me okay? I know this is going to sound a little strange, but I actually think we're pretty lucky here because I think in front of us we have 2 good choices, at least 2 primary choices, and both of them I think are good. The first is our other finalist for this position, Mark Dones, was fantastic. Like they are sharp, passionate, and understand our system already. And then I was also excited to see that group of 17 candidates from a little while back, and or one step further back, and I saw there were some candidates there that were interesting to me, and I think really good. And I would be really happy with either going into executive session and just talking through some of those candidates and understanding better how the choice was made for the 4, or frankly moving forward with if Mark Jones was interested, moving forward in that direction, because I think we would be privileged to have somebody of that caliber as well.
Thank you, Simha. Pastor Anderson.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Sorry I was a little bit late. My question is centered around hopefully what Simha was alluding to, and then Adrian as well. The Hawkins group was hired to do a lot of the vetting for us, and we certainly wouldn't hire somebody that we wouldn't respect their scope of work. So with that in mind, I'm in hopes that we as a group can move forward with the next candidate in line, knowing that there's a different set of skill sets that person possesses, but we still understand that there's going to be support staff that's going to have to be hired and onboarded, and perhaps those areas where there's some strengthening that's needed, we can look at how the support staff can accentuate some of those other, facilitate some of those other needs. But at this point, I agree. We've been very fortunate with those candidates that have come forward, and I'd like to see us find a way to move forward with one of those persons.
Thank you, Pastor Anderson. Any other questions or comments regarding the process and for our search committee members with us today? Okay.
Sorry, I have a question. I know we, and I agree with everything everybody said. Was there an effort to circle up with Regina Cannon that can be shared with members of the implementation board, either in public or in executive session? And I absolutely agree with the other members who are urging us to move forward. I don't mean to hold things up. That was something we discussed in the last meeting and would like to know where we're at with that.
Okay. Well, Harold and I can get to that, but just for those purposes of the agenda, just to keep Lisa and Alex waiting if there's other things. I think that was it. So seeing none, we'll wrap with thanking Alex and Lisa for joining us for this portion of the agenda. Appreciate your time with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
And to Sarah, your question to Harold and I and staff in regards to follow up with Regina. Yes, Harold and I had a conversation with Regina leading up to today's meeting, and we can share with you. Harold, you want to start kind of the feedback that we had from her on our call on Sunday, and then just in terms of following up on the takeaway from last Monday's special meeting.
Well, I'm always impressed when I'm in her presence. To not go too much into the weeds, she impresses upon us to, and I think this is a good leeway into maybe our discussion, that the CEO needs to have our backing and trust. We might argue, we might disagree at times, but we're all in line into the same path. We have to build community. CEO has to have some voice in housing, which our scope does not cover. And some of the decisions that have been made have further broken or led to the system being even further broken. And I don't want to speak for her, but I'm just saying my takeaway. If the system is to be repaired, we just don't leave people in housing. We do the emergency response. We get someone into housing, but do we develop a community with philanthropy, with county, not letting Seattle being like the big brother, our dad that has a lot of voice, but we really reach out to the other suburbs and get them involved. Listen to their voices, listen to what's going on, and we try to build community, faith community, philanthropy, the city and the county. We all have to come together in one regional approach. We can't have a diverse one, else we'll start driving people away from us. Good candidates, and we're lucky, and I'll mention more of this later on, that as Sima said, we're fortunate, and we have some good a candidate pool to pull from. But the system has to be together and not torn apart. And we don't have any politicians on this board. And so we don't have a fear of being reelected. So we should move forward in trying to build community. And that's one of her big takeaways from Regina. We have to build community and have to have CEO that has some voice in housing and how it's to be allocated. And emergency response has to have some follow through, not just getting someone to housing, leaving them there, because she said the success rate is with wraparound resources, not just dropping someone off, but getting those resources to that person.
Yeah, just to add on Harold to what Harold shared, which was very thorough overview without trying to be too repetitive. The emphasis on community was certainly there, whether it's permanent housing. We talked about, the three of us have talked about access and mobility in terms of transportation to these services for like workforce training as an example, access to healthcare. How are we taking a comprehensive collective approach in terms of how we're being able to best support our constituencies in this regard? Collaboration. She was more so about ensuring that we weren't a siloed authority in our institution, that there was greater interconnectedness to other efforts that are happening. And she emphasized that we clearly have the resources to be able to accomplish all that, that here in the Pacific Northwest and here in the county. One thing she also offered too was offering her own personal support to advise and counsel whoever the new CEO may end up being. And so something that we can talk about and consider too, and making sure that she's offered herself to still be involved despite not taking the position. Okay. Given that we just closed that part of the agenda with Alex and Lisa on the CEO search committee, we are in kind of a place now to be able to have open discussion in regards to a CEO finalist, or as we were discussing, as a few members of this board were discussing during the CEO search committee portion of the agenda, I heard some interest about potentially going into executive session to have a more specific dialogue about the qualifications of some of those candidates. So I guess entertain any consideration from the board in terms of what direction they'd like to go through next.
Unless someone else has something they'd like to discuss, I would move that we move to executive session for purposes of discussing alternative candidates.
Second the motion. Pastor Carrie Anderson.
Okay, I have a motion from Sarah and second from Pastor Anderson on a motion to move to executive session to review qualifications of an applicants for public employment with a time to, let's do reconvene maybe 30 minutes from now. So it's 2:35 at my clock at 3:05 p.m. Before I move to do so, Gordon, did you have something to discussion before? Okay.
I'm with Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, considering that motion, do I hear all of those in favor say aye?
Aye.
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 All opposed that say nay. Okay, we will move into executive section now. Implementation board members, please look in your email for a new Zoom link from Sarah Dickmeyer. If we could invite Deanna Gregory as well as Alex and Lisa to join us from the search committee as well. Thanks, and we'll be back at 3:05 p.m. Hi, this is Nate Caminos, co-chair of the Implementation Board, coming back to extend executive session for another 20 minutes for the purpose of reviewing qualifications of applicants for public appointment. So I have 3:07 now. We'll be back in 20 minutes at 3:27 p.m. Okay, board, just open it up for any discussion.
I'm not seeing the resolution. Did you email it? Oh, no, here we are. It's over here.
Okay, board open for discussion. Okay.
I think everybody's really excited to do this, though.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim. I was going to do it myself.
Well, I'd like to move to approve Resolution 2021-03, which is resolution of the Implementation Board of the King County Regional Homelessness Authority, recommending Mark Dones as Chief Executive Officer for the authority.
I second the motion.
Simha for the motion and Sarah with the second.
Open for discussion.
Gordon here.
Gordon?
I'll be real quick. I think this is a great resolution to this portion of a very important enabling process. I'm excited to be ready to vote in support of the resolution and hopefully get underway some really important work for our community. Thank you.
I believe Adrian Quinn is the next person.
Thanks, thanks, Harold. I think that we were very fortunate to have had a very strong candidate pool, and the candidates all bring different strengths and talents. I think Mark will be a strong change agent for our community and enable us to move forward.
Thank you, Adrian. I'm not seeing any other hands for discussion.
Harold, I see Lamont.
Lamont?
Lamont and Sarah and Michael.
Yes, as an alternate for Juanita Spotted Elk, she sends her strong recommendation for Mark Dones, and as well as the Lived Experience Coalition. We're just really excited. We think Mark Dones is going to be an excellent CEO. Thank you.
Was Sarah next?
Also, just wanted to celebrate, I think in light of our continued conversation and excitement, we've always felt that that Mark is a tremendous candidate. I'm excited for the support that I think they will garner and be able to facilitate. So I'm very enthusiastic about the discussion that we've had about them all along. And am looking forward to the vote.
Am I missing someone? I see no other hands.
Yes, we've got Carrie, then Simha, then Deanna.
Oh, okay. Carrie? Or Simha?
Pastor Anderson, then
Pastor Anderson.
Go ahead, Pastor Anderson.
So am I on? Real quick, just want to offer a high commendation to the courageous conversations that we've had in this selective process. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Pastor Anderson. So now I see Simha.
I just want to share something that Mark Dones said in his interview was with us was that they wanted to finish what they started, and I'm just really excited to watch that happen. I think Mark will do a great job in leading us.
Harold, we had Deanna, and then I'd volunteer myself or throw my hand up after her.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, just for the record and just for clarification, that the resolution 2021-03 does contain the same, or very, it does contain salary, beginning annual salary parameters of between 200,000 and 250,000. So that language has not been changed or amended from any prior documents.
Thank you, Deanna. And I just wanted to say, I appreciate the board's due diligence here in the last week since our special meeting last Monday, both in looking at the body of work that the CEO search committee did and the finalists that were there, the list of 17 total back in December. Not having been a part of the search committee myself, I was impressed with the 4 finalists we saw in January, and most certainly we're very confident in the final 2, as we all were. Most of us were in the end, and I spoke to that when Harold and I came to the governing committee earlier in February. And so I think that being impressed and looking forward to the opportunity to work with Mark here, not just in terms of the milestone of having a CEO, but a next opportunity and chapter for us as a board, as a governing committee, as an authority all together to work in unison as a collaborative partner and agency in addressing homelessness and all the connectivities that Regina had emphasized to us and throughout the interview process as well, on all aspects of livability for our residents and our constituents here in King County.
I see no other hands. Am I correct?
Correct.
Sarah, I know your function's not working. You have your hand up? Okay.
Carrie Anderson, call for the question.
I'm sorry?
Carrie Anderson, call for the question.
Thank you, Pastor Anderson. So we'll call now for a vote. Sola, can we take a roll call vote?
Yes. Pastor Carrie Anderson,
Yes.
Nate Caminos,
Yes.
Paula Carballo,
Yes.
John Chelmanek,
Yes.
Gordon McHenry Jr.,
Yes.
Harold Odom,
Yes.
Damian Patanud,
Yes.
Adrian Quinn,
Yes.
Michael Ramos,
Yes.
Sarah Rankin,
Yes.
Simha Reddy,
Yes.
and Lamont Green for Juanita Spotted Elk.
Yes.
Fantastic. We have all yeses.
Then the resolution passes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we have went over by some bit. So before I call for an adjournment of the meeting, Nate, did you have any parting words?
No, this would have been part of, thank you, Harold, for all of that. And this was part of the agenda that we had for any new business. I don't believe we have any. Know the reminder that when we had last had a regularly scheduled meeting back in February, there was a lot of to-dos, including discussions about implementation board structure. We had some additional follow-ups in regards to working with legal on the OPMA training we also received in the month of February that we have ahead of us. So a lot of other additional items and getting back to the regular order of business to come in our next regularly scheduled meeting. So from that, you will hear from Gordon, myself, from Harold, myself, and other members of staff, support staff in the next couple of weeks on what those look like and to come. But with that, there's no other additional business for today's meeting.
Thank you, Nate. Just on a personal note, I would like to thank this implementation board for all your hard work and standing behind Nate and I. It's been almost a full-time job this last month. But thank you for, we've been trying to keep everyone up to date. And I like to apologize to the staff. I have been maybe a little short with some people, but Jeannie, Sola, Gabriel, and Carrie, we so much appreciate you. I think some of the frustration that I'm going under with health issues, especially my eyesight, but on Friday I have a doctor's appointment. So I'm so happy for that. I'm just thrilled to be a part of this group, and the discussions we've had has been opening. So with that, Chair's entertain a motion for, oh, go ahead.
Before we do so, Harold, just one order of business to follow up that I failed to mention as well. Just knowing that we did decide to take this action today, we will work with staff and members of the governing committee to find when there can be a next scheduled governing committee meeting for Harold and I to come back to present this resolution to the governing committee for their consideration. So more to come on that as well.
With that, Chair's entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. And second.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
Well.
Thanks, everybody.